are you receiving
Can you hear
us
us?
over spaces? Can you do anything about the signal? Can you boost the signal from where you are on the space station, or
Hang on, just trying.
use your towel if you have to?
I haven't got enough hands. That's the problem.
That's the wrong towel.
He's figuring out. He's getting there. I see. He's looking. He's getting it going.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you, man.
Can you hear us?
Okay, I cannot hear you, so I'm working on that.
Yeah.
Try putting earbuds in. Try that. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes your computer automatically says, "Oh, okay, I'll switch over to audio on the earbuds."
Should we wind him up and just start going?
All right, I got it.
Yay!
You got us?
All right, nice.
Easier, Randy. Yes.
How you doing, man? You all right?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic.
We were all talking about what our second choices would have been if we didn't pick our first one.
Maybe for a chapter 2, like if we're going to do this and it goes well, maybe let's go with. I was just saying, like my second choice was X-Files was a close second, but I felt that Babylon 5 was more hardcore sci-fi, and I think that's what we're all talking about, whether we're talking about Trek or Quantum Leap or Firefly. I think that's all good, hard, and SG-1. I think that's all good, hard sci-fi.
I might have done Battlestar Galactica.
Which one?
The newer one. So I know the older one. I haven't seen the older one. I know about it, but I thought the recent one was pretty good. It wasn't perfect, but it was. I enjoyed it a lot.
I enjoyed that actually.
It was okay. Yeah, it was a good one.
I thought it had that creeping doom, which I'm a big fan of the creeping doom.
Awesome.
Yes.
I think my second choice, I mean, it was really close. I was thinking, oh yeah, now I can't think of it.
Willow.
Twilight Zone.
Willow.
Twilight Zone. What, the original?
Yeah, with Rod Serling.
Oh,
wow.
Very cool.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm going to go writing choices, and I got to say the two best written shows that, in my mind, in my opinion, that we've ever seen is Firefly and The Twilight Zone. And Twilight Zone isn't maybe as hard a science fiction as what we're kind of talking here, but definitely with the kind of let's take a look at things differently. I still feel it falls into the science fiction category.
Definitely.
What about the Outer Limits, Randy? Do you think that's too often overlooked? We all say Twilight Zone because it had a cooler theme tune. Do you think Outer Limits is
Outer Limits has some great episodes. So the Zonti Misfits is my favorite, and that's one where the little ant things, you know, they look like cootie. There was a cootie game way back when, so it kind of looked like cooties with a really ugly face, right? Kind of ugly people face. And I thought that was great. I mean, it had a very Twilight Zone ending, right? Which is there's this big war and lots of people die and all the Zonti Misfits die, and the Zontis are like, thank you, because you guys are the only people so savage as to be able to kill others, right? And we don't have the heart to do it, but you did it for us. And I mean, so it really made a great science fiction point. I mean, that's what science fiction was all about.
Yeah. I mean, so leading on for that, so my choice, I'll kick things off, and then because I think my one will be a bit quicker than you guys, because I do tend to not waffle as much as you lot.
No, we noticed that actually. Getting one word out of you is tough. Right, if you're going to start now, I'll be back in about an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so everyone can shut. No, but leading on to that, so Outer Limits. The one thing with Babylon 5 is the conceptual consultant on it was a guy called Harlan Ellison. Now, I'm assuming I really am assuming you know Randy, and you're nodding straight away. Yeah. To the uninitiated, he did write. He was part of the new wave of sci-fi in the late 50s, early 60s, and he'd written hundreds of short stories, sci-fi. He'd written books. He'd written an episode of the original Star Trek, City on the Edge of Forever, which is considered one of the best episodes of Trek. by the hardcore fans, but I'm not a hardcore Trekkie. But anyway, he was conceptual consultant. And for me, when Babylon 5 come out in 93, the only thing you had was Trek.
Yeah.
Original Trek and The Next Generation. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. So Babylon 5 comes along and it's not wide-eyed and bushy-tailed. It's a bit grizzled and world-weary, and there's wars going on, and there's an overarching. So the thread that went through the entire series was these two races, the Vorlons and the Shadows. That's all they called them, was the Shadows. But and they tried to make it as esoteric and as opaque as they could. These alien races. They didn't want to give them too much of a physical, because it was a very kind of philosophical way of framing all these stories. And I enjoyed it for that, because for me, and I don't know if I'm explaining, where's like the Next Generation, which was the biggest thing at the time, and it was great, don't get me wrong, but B5 seemed to be hard sci-fi. It seemed to have an edge to it, and I think it's Harlan Ellison's influence on it. This guy, part of the new wave. So you had him and maybe Arthur C. Clarke and Robert Heinlein and I don't know, Brian Aldiss, and anyway, there's a ton of them. But suddenly, where my only sci-fi hit, apart from Next Generation, was books and comics and pulp magazines, or like the like stuff like this.
Oh, yeah.
Guys would be writing short stories. This would be my only hit, and I knew you'd love this, Randy. I knew you'd love this. But this is where these science fiction writers, they honed their craft. And like I was saying to Spaces earlier, Harlan Ellison took just a fascinating fact about this. He kind of, I would kind of say he's almost the co-creator of Babylon 5, but it's not. It was J. Michael Straczynski that created it.
Yeah.
Where you can definitely see Harlan Ellison influence. And just quickly before I move on from him, he wrote a short story called The Soldier for one of these sci-fi magazines. And it was what he claimed James Cameron ripped him off for The Terminator. And he took him to court, and James Cameron settled out.
Remember that?
He settled out of court with him. So this is the guy, and I think you can see. So for me, it was that hard edge of stuff. Favorite character was one of the reptilian alien called Jakar, who they intentionally made to look like a villain. His makeup, and it was the guy who played the one-armed man in the Fugitive movie, Andreas Katsoulis. If you remember the Harrison Ford Fugitive movie, the one-armed man, it was him. And he was one of the main characters, one of the main alien race kind of ambassadors. First season, he's got the reptilian makeup and all the etc. And in the second series, they twist it, and he becomes not. They subvert expectations in a good way. Because you think they're going to be the warlike race because the way they look and the way he is, but they end up getting massacred and their planet taken over and all the rest of it. And the next couple of seasons is him trying to help his planet overcome the invaders, plus the overall. It was all war, but you had Babylon 5 in the middle. They're trying to hold it all. They're trying to hold everybody back. And I just really did that. Really did enjoy that. And the second or third season, hold on, I will consult my notes. The third series was written entirely by J. Michael Straczynski. And I think that was the first time ever that anyone had written an entire series of TV ever.
And was that the best season?
It was. And he also wrote the entire 4th season as well, which he had to rush because the channel at the time, whatever channel it was in the US, I think they was undercome some kind of in some kind of trouble, and in the end, TNT optioned series 5. But so series 4, where Straczynski had envisioned 5 series of this show, which what we was talking about before. I love it when they say beginning, middle, end, you know, rather than like Amber was saying earlier, where it just, you know, the network wants you to carry on
dragging it out.
I can see, you can imagine the network executive saying, I can see 25 series of this. and they're rubbing their hands, and you think, oh my God, you know, it was like Breaking Bad when my son, when the guys, and they was all from the X-Files, they'd all come, you know, they obviously not just done X-Files and went on to Breaking Bad, but those guys, they knew what they were doing. But my son said to me, oh, I wish there was just one more series. And I went, no, I love the guys for doing this. I love it. You know, it was getting better and better and better.
Yeah.
And just went, but that's only because they knew where it was going to end. They had the vision, loved it. But series 4 for Babylon 5 was rushed because he envisaged 5 series.
Yeah.
He didn't think he was going to get the 5th one. So the Vorlon Shadow, the Vorlon Shadow War all culminated in series 4, which was awesome. But looking back on the digital special effects, you know, I moan about the CGI on She-Hulk, but looking back on it, bless them, you know, in the mid-90s, it really does look like a computer game.
Yeah.
But they were the first show to use digital editing. I found out in my research. I don't know if you knew that, Amber. I don't know what
digital editing. Like, okay,
what difference that makes. Whether it means they weren't splicing a piece of film and sellotaping it together, and they was doing it on a computer, but the technology was there, and they did it. But yeah, that for me really, they had the Psychor. So it was about telepaths, and one of the alien, just little things that I loved. The fact that an alien race had bred, you know, centuries ago, they put telepathic abilities within the human race so that we could be a part of helping the Vorlons out in the Shadow War. Just little, like I say, hard sci-fi elements to it that really romped along for me. So I think I'm gonna leave that one now. 5 series, but series 2, episode 1, is almost like a reboot. Forget series 1 if you're not going to put up with all them series, which I don't imagine they will. You watch episode 2 and then you get right into it. And then they did some movies in the late 90s. They did some TV movies, and there was one called, where are my notes? It was called In the Beginning, and that's about the Earth-Minbari War. So the captain of Babylon 5, he was a fighter in the Earth-Minbari War, and he had a massive victory over the Minbari race, who he's overseeing as a peacekeeper on the space station Babylon 5, which caused friction as well. So loved it. Well,
was it more of an ensemble cast on Babylon 5? So I've never seen it.
Oh, big time.
Yeah. I've never actually seen it either. So
no, you had the captain of the station, and then it was all the alien races, but it was more. It really was. It was hard sci-fi, science fiction stories, all wrapped up in warfare, warring nations, warring races. But again, like good sci-fi, it all boils down to how we all are to each other, how we all react, but with Babylon 5, there was never a neat little bow on an ending anywhere ever. There was always something that wasn't satisfactory. Like even the conclusion to the war and stuff, there was always, it wasn't just all sorted and all that's good and we all lived happily ever after. There was always something, and I think that
more,
that boils back to the old sci-fi elements of stuff from Outer Limits, from Twilight Zone, where, you know, a little something left.
Yeah,
it's not all as it seems. And obviously Walter Koenig, good old Chekhov, he was in it, from the Psi Corps as well. And apparently he really did enjoy playing the role because he was really dark. He was really evil in it.
Did he find his vessels?
Yeah, I tell you what, he had mental vessels in this one. So,
what was your best episode?
That's my choice.
What was your best episode?
Best episode for me personally was an episode called The Inquisitor.
Not the Star Wars ones.
The Vorlons, who are one of the major races in this story, used this guy to test any of their allies. And he comes to Babylon 5. The Vorlons have sent him in, and they kept him alive for centuries. Cut a long story short, it's Jack the Ripper.
Oh, shit.
And
wow,
throughout that episode of the story, and he's interrogating one of the Membari races, and she's really humble and she's really polite and very diplomatic, but they're one of the major races that they need in the war against the Shadows. But the Vorlons send him in, and what happens is Captain Sheridan, who's obviously the captain of Babylon 5, there's this budding romance between the two of them, even though he killed a lot of them in the war, you know, because he's this big war hero for Earth. He's a big war hero, but that means he slaughtered loads of Membari. But she anyway, he saves her life from the Inquisitor, and that's when you kind of find out through the story, you get little clues that the Vorlons have plucked him, and you kind of find out the reason why he would make a good Inquisitor. And what he's saying is he was testing people. He did what he did to test the society at the time and what they would do. It was really twisted.
Nice.
Really twisted. And it stands on its own. This is what that would stand on its own as a piece of like a Twilight Zone episode or Outer Limits. Watch that one without watching any other episode of Babylon 5.
Awesome.
So yes.
Nice.
But anyway,
nice.
that is my pick, guys.
Yep.
Nice.
Cool.
Who wants to go next?
Oh.
Anybody? Amber?
Let's not all fight about it.
Yeah, no, it's just very diplomatic. Very diplomatic today. Amber, go on. Go with TNG.
Amber. So I'm saying that Babylon 5 was kind of a counter to Next Generation.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly had zero interest in Babylon 5 until like hearing about it from you. I'm going, why haven't I watched this now? It was a competitor to Next Generation. It was, it's funny that you brought up the special effects thing because that was one of my notes about Next Generation. So we'll talk about that when we get to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go next. Let's see. I'm going to try and share. You've disabled screen sharing.
Oh, how do I?
Oh, here we go. Technical difficulties.
Sorted?
Let's see. Share screen. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to share my PowerPoint. Can you guys see this?
It's yes. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, nice. I don't want the pictures of us. Get us.
Oh, I want you to do that now.
You've taught him some new skills.
I'm going to disable that now. No.
All right.
No,
so
unless I do it first, I don't like it.
You guys got a good image there?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. All right. I picked Star Trek: The Next Generation. Why? Because this was the first sci-fi I was really exposed to and really, really interested in. My parents would stay up. It would show at like 10 o'clock at night here in the States. And I'd have to be in bed, but my sister and I would sneak out and watch it while my parents were watching. I really loved it, so that's why I picked it. I think I don't need to
Were
explain.
your parents fans of the original?
Not as much, no. And I think I can understand why they liked this one better, mainly because I think it really dove deep into some of the more philosophical ideas that they were trying to explore in some of these shows. And it was touched on in the original series, but they would put it on the forefront of Next Generation, where there'd be whole episodes with zero action, you know, where they're just sitting in a courtroom talking and you're mesmerized. It showed that there was drama in some of these interesting scenarios that could only happen in science fiction. So that's the main reason I think why it appealed to them, because they felt like this wasn't so much about what we were seeing on screen, so much as what it would leave you thinking about afterwards. You know, you'd come back and go like, wow, that actually made me think. You know, I feel like I've touched on something I would never have considered otherwise. Okay, so how the hell do I get to the next screen? Oh, I guess
is that episode the one you're talking about there, being in the courtroom? Is that the one with Commander Data?
Yeah, that's widely regarded, I think, as one of the best Star Trek episodes in the whole franchise, I think.
Fantastic,
yeah.
The one with a Klingon, what's his name as well?
Worf.
Yeah, there was another one with him, and that was the something like the sins of the father, I think. Where he basically has to go home and accept the punishment that for his father's crimes. Like I'm not going to get into it, but it's all really interesting stuff. Okay, so I actually just rearranged my PowerPoint to follow the bullet points that you sent us yesterday. Like, oh, okay, he wants us to go over these specific things. So I just kind of rearranged them. All right, favorite.
Listen, any which way you want to go through it. I just thought it was to close in on some elements of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, my dog ate my homework.
It's all good. I thought you were doing it on the way home. You were driving home from work, like making notes in your notebook.
That's a classic. That is Tayters.
Okay, so all right, I'm gonna just go by the bullet points that you gave us. So favorite episode or series of episodes. Anything that includes Q, I think, is brilliant. There were 3 goofy ones. I said including the 2 goofy ones because 2 of them were especially goofy, but most of them are just so good. He was a creation of Gene Roddenberry at the last second. He had to turn a 1-hour script into a 2-hour script for the first episode. It was 1 hour, but the studio wanted 2, and none of the writers wanted to give him a 1 hour. And Gene Roddenberry said, "Give me that." Kind of superficial, you know, where the crew arrives at this planet and they're going to investigate this alien race that wants to give them this new technology, and they find out something's up with this technology. It's not, you know, what they say it is. Anyway, it was kind of a, you know, just a mystery plot. But they added in this Q character that added so much, and that was Gene Roddenberry who added Q in, and it set the tone for the entirety of the series. I think if without this Q character, I don't think that the Next Generation would have taken off quite as well as it did, because he turned it into, this is not just Star Trek Part 2. This is something different. So I really liked that a lot.
Because they brought this character back for Picard, haven't they? Yeah,
they did. And I just found out about that. So I'll get more into why I like Q coming up. But let's do that then. So I'm gonna follow my PowerPoint, man. I put a lot of work into this damn thing. We're gonna do this. All right. I also like any episodes with the Borg. I think they're one of the best villains, and I'm excluding what they did with the Borg in the movies. Yeah. So Star Trek: The Next Generation had the idea of the Borg is a hive mind, not, you know, one mind that's controlling all of these little entities, but rather there's no one mind. Like you could cut off the finger and the finger would go off and become another hive. I loved that idea. I thought that was so brilliant, so terrifying that, you know, there's no negotiating. Their entire purpose is like a virus. It's to just spread and duplicate themselves. I love that. I put that into the category of the creeping doom, which is one of my favorite types of villains, where it's just this slowly growing, never, you know, you unstoppable force. And they really do come across as unstoppable, since you could cut off an arm and the arm becomes its own, the source of a new colony. And they ruined that with the movies by putting in this queen character. I think the queen was the worst idea to have ever been introduced to the series. So
they did fall a bit.
Yeah,
I think the best line from the Borg was when Picard was on the ship, and he says we would die, and his death is irrelevant. It's like,
yeah,
oh, in fact, death is the most relevant to us. But
exactly.
Very, very good. Very good.
You could have picked a picture. You could have chosen a picture of 7 of 9.
I could have, but I'm trying to stick with Next Generation. I think
That's
this is one of the
Voyager.
first Borgs. Okay, so then if I was going to pick a favorite episode, so I had, I like the Q stuff, I like the Borg stuff, but if I had to nail one episode down, and I know this is a weird one, people are going to go, what the hell? Why do you like this one? I mean, I'm picking a non-Q, non-Borg one. Season 3, episode 10, there's an episode called The Defector. And it really follows this guy who he's leaving the Romulan race, or not leaving the Romulans. He finds out that there's a secret base that the Romulans have built in the neutral zone. And it's like the start of a potential huge war. And he defects. And I'm not going to go into what happens, but this is an example of a character who has no role in the series as a whole. He's there for one episode and then gone. Yeah. But it made an impact because it was just a very real sort of human and emotional story. So I was going to say, if you've ever you're looking for a story that you could watch without needing any other context, this is a good one. I know it's 3 seasons in, but you'll feel it. You'll still feel it just because you're following this character and what's going on in his life. So anyway.
Super good episode.
I don't remember that episode.
In that one, if I remember rightly, he basically gives up his family.
Yeah, he gives up his life and his family to try to stop a war. And I mean, I guess I can get into spoilers here. I mean, people have seen this show, but
I mean, it was a couple of years ago now. We might be okay.
Yeah, he finds out that that basically the Romulans were trying to find out, who's a weak link in their chain of command, and they put out this false disinformation about this secret base that actually didn't exist. So in order to save both sides, the humans and the Romulans, from a war, he sacrifices, living in Romulus and being with his family to go and tell the Federation, you've got to stop this base. You need to know that it exists because it's going to be bad news. And then he finds out there is no base. They just fed him this false information, and he gave up everything for no reason at all. So it's really tragic. And then he kills himself at the end, which, very sad.
Very good episode.
Very good episode. And it's not one that people cite very often. I think there's other ones that people really appreciate more, but this one was it was an emotion-based episode, especially because you feel for what he wants.
Absolutely.
Favorite character. Okay. And I've put it in a tier. There's 3. So Worf, anything with Worf is awesome. The Klingons are basically the samurai aliens. Their culture is so interesting to me. Even my mom, she's like, I love the Klingon death cry, and I love their tea ceremony, and it's so cool. They really got creative with the Klingon race. So anything with Worf, and he's hilarious. He has some of the best lines in the show, like one-liners that have nothing of significance to the plot, but it's like observations. I watched an episode last night where these disgusting alien creatures that are just frozen, and they're standing there for half the episode not moving because they're in, I don't know, some sort of hibernative sleep or whatever.
The fish ones.
Yes, the fish ones. And he just goes, what a handsome race. They're just these disgusting looking things. He does that throughout the series. Just these.
Do you know whether that would have been ad-libbed or not?
Comments,
Stuff
Sorry,
like.
go ahead.
Would that have been ad-libbed?
I don't know. Gosh, I wouldn't put it past them, but
No, that's cool. Yeah.
It was so funny, just what's going on in the Klingon mind, that they have a completely different idea of beauty and honor, and it's fascinating. I love it. But it's understandable. You look at it and you go, oh, I get it. He would look at this disgusting fish thing and he's like, they're so awesome looking. But
that wouldn't surprise me if he did ad-lib that, though.
I wouldn't surprise me. Yeah,
he did a lot of voice acting. Michael Dorn. He
did. Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah, he done a lot of kids cartoons, a lot of children's stuff. But
okay, now I'm going to be googling that, and I'm going to go look for that.
There's lots. Yeah, there's lots. It's just I remember watching my younger brother watching Saturday morning cartoons and hearing the voice. It's like that's Worf. What's happening?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so funny. I've got to find those now. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
No, I loved him. Great character. I love that
Excellent.
he kind of gets with Troy at the end. I thought that was so funny and like unexpected, but perfect at the same time. Okay. Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard. He's the reason I think that the show people okay, I'm just gonna say this. People compare Picard to Kirk a lot, like who's better. Obviously Kirk is gonna beat Picard in a fight, but he wasn't designed to be that character. Now you put Riker with Kirk and that'll be an interesting match. But this is supposed to be, he was written as the administrator, written as the more mature captain. This is the guy who pilots with his mind rather than with his brawn, and I appreciated that because that's what gave this show that extra element that wasn't just what you're seeing on the screen, it's what you're thinking about in your head. So I thought he played it perfectly. I mean, he really did set the tone for this entire the entire cast. I think people improved their acting. I mean, everybody else is mostly good, but he's great. He really did a great job, and I think that people grew because of him.
He definitely brought the gravitas to the entire.
Oh yeah,
and the weight of expectation on his shoulders.
Yeah, and
there was a lot to take on. To be fair,
he really honored the material too. He respected it. He was regarded on set as being a bit of a fuddy-duddy. I mean, there's lots of great stuff behind the scenes of him goofing off with the cast, but he took the world and the material very seriously, and I appreciate that so much. And I think that's why he put on such a great performance, is he really dedicated himself.
There's just not many actors like that anymore.
No, there aren't. And I've seen several episodes of, well, not several, I've seen like maybe of Picard, and I feel like they're not writing him as Picard. He doesn't seem like the same man. No. Again, this is too much stuff has happened off screen so that we now see a man who we don't recognize. And I also feel like they're writing for a character who's supposed to be much younger. He is not supposed to be up and active and doing stuff. He should be the older guy in his chair who young people come to for advice, and he gives them advice, and it just makes you think, damn, this guy has been through a lot. But they're not doing that with him, and I think that's a mistake because it makes Patrick Stewart look bad. He's not bad, he's just old.
Or not do it. Do another Star Trek show.
Yeah.
Like they did Deep Space Nine, like they did Voyager.
Exactly.
Picard. Do a Star Trek series without murdering.
Yeah.
The character without.
Exactly.
Without.
All right. Anyway, number one favorite character. Q. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yep. Q.
Number 3 is Q.
He is so good. This was. I've got more. I'm just gonna. Okay, there you go, Q. I just love that picture of him lounging on the deck, watching everybody in panic as they're trying to figure out how to deal with the Borg. I thought that was great.
Like a very nice boy there, doesn't he?
John Delancey did a fantastic job with him. I think he was one of the only other performers that was a regular on the show who could compete with Patrick Stewart. Yeah. And it was a totally different kind of role. So, it's hard to say how he would do in different circumstances, but man, he was so magnetic. Once he's on screen, your eyes are on him. You want to see what he's doing. He's using everything that he's got, his face, his body language, his voice. It's great. He nailed it. So, okay, brilliant and inspired, portrayed and written, Q, the character. So this is something that I thought was really interesting. I brought up this quote from Voltaire: "If God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him." Now, Gene Roddenberry, who wrote the character Q, he wrote, well, we all know who Gene Roddenberry is. I'm not going to give you this. He was an atheist and wanted to
actually
write.
Gene Roddenberry, or is that Randy from a couple of years ago?
That's Gene. So he wrote the character Q and came up with this, and I thought it was so fascinating because he's written this character who is essentially a god in a science fiction world, and I thought that was, he managed to fit in something that you would think would not fit into hard sci-fi. And I guess Star Trek you wouldn't consider necessarily hard sci-fi, not as hard as some others, but they tried to ground every episode in something, and then they had this character who was basically God, right? Or at least ambiguously God. There's a few episodes that I think they did bad with him in Next Generation, where, you know, the Q kicks him out of the continuum and he becomes human. That took the mystery out of the Q character. But all the other episodes, I felt like there was this dedication to keeping him mysterious. You don't know what his powers are. You kind of question yourself, like, is it possible that he is something like God? Like, if there is a God, wouldn't he come down to earth if he was going to, you know, try to tease people or, you know, test them, their limits, and try to bring them to that next level of thinking? And I think that it would be Q. He would come down as Q. He would be the Q character. So let's see, the controversy of including Q. I think I already touched on that lightly, but there was not only behind the scenes in the writing room, but in general, people were upset that the character was put in the show at first, because they thought, you're putting religion in a sci-fi show. And Gene Roddenberry said, no, that's not the purpose of him. You know, this is supposed to be this evolved being that's, you know, beyond anything that we can even comprehend. But people said this is basically the concept of God being put into our stories. And I felt like Gene Roddenberry, in trying to portray this, you know, what would be the ultimate, you know, all-knowing being, did accidentally write God into the story. But it was interesting because it tested the people in the show. It tested the writing, saying, okay, you're not going to look at the events that are happening and come to some, you know, oh, we've learned a lesson. You know, I'm so glad that we've learned that lesson about, you know, don't do drugs or whatever. This was a character who challenged the people in the show to write about things that were so existential and so deep compared to what was just happening on the page. I think he was the reason, like I said, the show was just so freaking good at touching on things that weren't right on the forefront, but things that made you walk away and go, dang, that made me think about, you know, what's underlying this message, but then what's underlying that underlying message. So I'm not going to get too much into it.
And I think good sci-fi, Amber, I do think good sci-fi will have an element of spirituality to it.
Yeah, oh, it definitely does. And
not about religion necessarily.
Yeah.
It's what
asking you to think. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're just quickly on that one note, there was an episode of Babylon 5 where you had an alien race who the medic on the space station, he was afflicted with whatever, and because of the alien races, so the two parents of this child that was dying were forbidding the medic from helping their child because of their beliefs. The entire episode was, so all right, you could say that's Catholics that don't want a blood transfusion, whatever it is. I don't, you know, you could get deep into it. But again, that episode left more questions opened. It left it up to the audience. It did not define what, they didn't tell you what you should be thinking or what side you should be on, whether you should be on the parent's side or the medic side, you know. And nowadays that would be they
would make a statement.
That would be the far left agenda, and it would be, oh, the other idiots over that side. But instead, the decent sci-fi, like you're saying there about, you know, Roddenberry being atheist. But no, I think that element of spirituality, I think, well, just for me, I think good sci-fi can include that, and it leaves you, like you said, it leaves you thinking about something. What would I have done?
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't have to be sci-fi, and it doesn't have to be a spiritual or religious point of view. Sometimes it could be, oh, would I have made that decision to, you know, do X, Y, Z? It doesn't have to. It doesn't mean religion, but I like it when something asks a question of you.
Yeah, and not exactly trying to teach, but maybe show, here's a different perspective, and now we want you to think about it. We're not trying to tell you this is how it should be, but isn't this worth thinking about?
Yeah,
it's something that can question your moral compass.
Yeah.
What would
absolutely.
No, cool.
Okay, so the actor based his character on Lord Byron, which I thought was interesting because he's you know, the romantic and the poet, but at the same time he was regarded as being this very dangerous kind of guy. I won't go too much into that. You can look into it if you want. I thought that the character Q is the archetype of Shakespeare's fool. He's not really involved in the plot, but he is sort of asking the characters to he's teasing them, he's testing them, he's pushing them to their limits, all so that they can look at themselves and what their situation is differently. I love that. I know that Goethe's, I can never say the freaking name, Mephistopheles, there you go. Mephistopheles, another inspiration for this character. So moving on to the next bit here, I've got, okay.
Sorry, just quickly, that actor's also in Stargate as well. He plays a senator that's trying to shut down the Stargate program.
Yeah. He does?
And
oh,
yes,
fantastic.
He is in Stargate.
He's a great actor. Great actor.
Awesome. Oh man, now I really am okay. I'm getting on the Stargate train, I guess. Okay. His dialogue is also a level up above everybody else's, and I think that that's kind of following in with him being inspired by literary characters, especially Shakespeare. He really has some of the best and most interesting dialogue. I'm just going to read a couple of them. I think I've actually okay. He says, if you can't, just the beauty of this language, if you can't take a little nosebleed, maybe you ought to go back home and crawl under your bed. It's not safe out here. It's wondrous, with treasures to satiate desires both subtle and gross, but it's not for the faint of heart. I don't know where else you see poetic dialogue like this, and half of his stuff is actually quoting literature that already exists, but I mean, I really appreciate somebody putting so much thought into just the dialogue of their character. You don't see a whole lot of that today. You get a lot of.
You should read some Stan Lee, Silver Surfer, if you like dialogue like that.
Okay, my brother-in-law has told me about Silver Surfer before, so now I'm going. Okay, great, another more homework. And if you want a really good example of his character, this is the last point I'm making on Q, is take a look at his last conversation with Q with Captain Picard at the very end of the series. It's so good. I said it's a masterwork in saying what isn't said. And it's what you pointed to, Hog, where he doesn't tell you what he wants you to think. He tells you that there is something more to think about and leaves you go like, I'm almost there. I've almost got it. You know, that is essentially his last conversation with Picard in the series. I sure hope that they do more with him in
and life is choices. Life is choices. And some, you know, any choice you ever make is going to be sometimes right and sometimes wrong in someone else's eyes. What you think's right can be wrong. What I like about good sci-fi is when they kind of just leave it that little bit open.
Yeah.
They used to, which I think is what I'm finding enjoyable about talking about these older shows.
Yeah.
They were brave enough to leave stuff open. They wasn't trying to preach anything to anyone. Just tell some good storylines, and maybe if it was a good week, maybe leave us with a question or two to ask ourselves. But if it didn't mean it was a bad week. It just meant that they told a good story and you was on to next week. Yeah. And it's great.
All right, moving on to the next bit. Favorite season? I'm saying season 3. Season 3 and 4, really from season 3 going forward, every season got pretty much better and better and better. Fewer terrible episodes, more good episodes.
How many
season 3?
Amber? How many seasons did they have in the end?
Was it 7 or 8?
7.
7? Okay, yeah, it was 7.
Right.
Yeah, season 3 was good. I was debating with myself between season 3 and season 4, but I picked 3 because Gene Roddenberry finally let go, and he was gone, but the writers were free to take his concepts and really run with it. And they started doing it in season 2 when they figured out, we can do character-based episodes instead of plot-based episodes. And so they really developed their characters in season 2. But season 3, they do so much. It's like you could tell the writers like, we're free, we can finally do this. And so they did some really good episodes in season 3. There was the Data creating an offspring, which was great. So many different ideas explored in that episode. There was the Borg, the Picard being assimilated was, I mean, my gosh, what a great series finale.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that.
Locutus.
Locutus, so good, so good. And this is something that affected the character forever, you know, so they bring it up again and again. I love it, love it, love it. You also have some of my favorite fun episodes. So the idea, I forget what the name of this guy is. They call him Broccoli, Lieutenant Barclay.
Yes, Barclay.
And his fantasies in the holodeck, very funny. So funny. I adored, you know, I like the funny episodes. They're usually cheesy, but occasionally you get a good one. You're like, dang, that was so good. And they sure could have done a lot more with the holodeck, which they did end up doing in the Orville. But anyway, it was great. You also had bringing back Tasha Yar in season 3, and you know, the 2 Enterprises, and what was it called? The Enterprise Past or something like that. I forget what the name of the episode was. That was a good episode too. And then it had the one that you mentioned, Hog, I think it was you, Worf having the courtroom episode. Again, you know, the samurai alien race having an entire episode that basically takes place in the courtroom. So good. So engaging and very little action, but brilliant. All right, best starter episode. And if I was going to say, if you don't start with episode 1, you would want to maybe hold on until episode 5 because it's a little more palatable. There are some really bad I was going to say something else. There's some bad episodes between episode 1 and episode 5. It's a Wesley episode, but it's one of those good ones where you feel like, all right, they're trying to do something a little bit more other than just an adventure show. They're asking, you know, the big questions. So that's the first one you have to hold on to. But if you're like, nah, I need something really substantial, you're gonna have to wait until the end of the series where you've got Conspiracy. I don't know if you guys remember the bug crawling.
Yeah, the little, talk about bad sci-fi.
Yeah, oh my gosh. That people really like the Conspiracy. Oh crap, what happened? People really like the Conspiracy episode just because it's exciting. It's a very intense mystery sort of, you know, thriller type episode. Then the really, really good one though is The Measure of a Man, considered one of the best of the whole franchise.
That was great.
It almost all takes place inside a courtroom, and it does that thing where it asks a deeper question than even the deeper questions. You know, they're saying, all right, is AI potentially alive? Is it alive? Does he have awareness? And okay, you know, we've seen so many sci-fis do this. But then it says, okay, if he's aware, does he have a right to himself, you know, to decide what he wants to do with himself, or is he a piece of property? And then it goes even deeper and it says, you know what? We've just proven that there's this being who we can't really prove if he's sentient or alive or self-aware or has a right to his own self, but he's so close to human. What does it say about us if we want to take something that even resembles a human and turn it into an object that we can toy with, or a piece of property, or create an entire race of them that could just serve us? Like what could that potentially cost humanity to do that? So, you know, it went to the deeper level, and then it went to the even deeper level, left you thinking like, you know, how are we going to desensitize ourselves by allowing this sort of step to be taken, you know? So anyway, I thought that was great.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. All right, so season 2, episode 9. Next, interesting facts. Other than Stephen Hawking appearing in an episode with representations of Einstein, Isaac Newton, and they're playing poker with Data. Love that. So I'm going to be talking about stuff that happened behind the scenes. This is very brief. I'm not going to go into all of it, but watch the documentary Chaos on the Bridge. I think it's about an hour. It's hilarious. It's a hilarious documentary telling you about everything going on behind the scenes in season 1 and 2. I had no idea. It is fascinating, and it's a miracle that this show got even to season 2. The fact that it survived beyond that and did so well is a miracle, really a miracle. It was absolute chaos. What's his name? Bill Shatner hosts it, and yeah, it's great. Watch that. So watch that if you want to see anything cool. Okay, so I just wrote this, and this is a weird thing, Hog. Before the 1980s and the early 1990s, most epic television shows were still shot on film, and any effects were mainly done with miniatures, and optical compositing was also done. but this is all done on film. And Star Trek The Next Generation, which began airing in '87, changed everything. So you're saying it was Babylon 5, and I've been reading that it was Next Generation. It's probably done at the same time with both of them.
Yeah.
So Next Generation was still shot on film, but the footage was then transferred to videotape. And as the series continued, it went on to digital tape formats, where it enabled a new wave of video-based visual effects. So this was a big deal because it was so much faster. They were able to put so much more special effects in episodes because it was a faster stuff on how the visual effects were done for especially like ships and things. Super fascinating. Not going to go much more into that. I'm just going to bring up that I actually know David Stipes, who was one of the special effects supervisors for Next Generation and Deep Space Nine and Voyager. He got 2 Emmys for I think it was 2 separate episodes of Next Generation. It was the Best of Both Worlds. That's the Borg one where they take Picard and there's the battle with all the ships. He did I think it was that episode. And then also you'll recognize this one from season 7, episode 6, The Telephone Inside of Data, which was forced perspective. I've worked on, I think, 3 different films with David Stipes and watched him do these special effects. And gosh, he's just the sweetest, nicest guy. He's really cool. And he loves the use of practical effects as an illusion of something different. So I'm sure he was just all over Lord of the Rings, the first one when it came out. But yeah. I appreciate it. This looks fantastic. It's totally convincing that there's a telephone inside of Data, but he's standing behind an object that's just perfectly lined up so that it looks like it's inside of him. So well done there.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
But anyway, that's all I got for Star Trek The Next Generation. Hopefully I was able to keep it mostly brief, but anyway, I recommend you go and check it out. It's going to be
that was episodes nice. That I remember, and then a lot that I don't. So yeah.
I watched the whole series all the way through, maybe once every other year, and my whole family does it. Just it gets turned on, and we all sit down and go, "Dang, that is such a freaking good episode! I forgot all about that one," you know. And not an episode of the show; it's just entertainment, great entertainment.
Yeah,
I mean, I've tried a couple of times, but I start at the wrong place. Like you said, I start a mission at Farpoint, and it's just like, ugh.
No, yeah, you need to watch that one just because you need to know who Q is.
Yeah, exactly. And,
yeah, but I would say 1, 2, 3, and 4 pretty crappy, but 5 a little bit better. You're not going to really get into the super juicy episodes until season 3.
No, it was great stuff. It was great stuff.
No.
All right, I'm done.
Nice.
Well, I'm not following that.
Sharing.
This is you. I'm not following that.
That's all right. I've got this.
All right. Space Lizard's going to put my PowerPoint to shame.
I haven't got a PowerPoint, but there'll be some nice little pictures that Hog's going to put in.
Nice.
So my one's Stargate SG-1, and similar to you, Amber, the reason I chose this was because it's what I grew up with. So I've been introduced, I mean, it came out in 97, so I was 7. But I've been introduced to Star Wars before that. But in terms of TV sci-fi, this was the first thing I was introduced to. My mum sat me down in front of it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And for me, as a young kid, it just blew my mind. When I first watched it, I never knew about the film beforehand. It was only a couple of years later I realised that there was actually a film. But if you've never seen any of it, basically, in Giza 1928, they discovered the Stargate on an excavation in Egypt, and it gets taken by the US military, and Daniel Jackson, who's an archaeologist who's got some crazy theories, deciphers the symbols on the Stargate, and he works out that they're actually star coordinates and they can go to another planet. When they go there, they realize very quickly that Ra, who's the ancient Egyptian god, sun god, he was actually an alien. So there was he's a what they call a Goa'uld, and he's has a symbiote. He's basically like a symbiote, and he takes over a human body. And he basically used that in ancient Egyptian times to enslave ancient Egypt. There was an uprising. Stargate gets buried. He goes off. Now we've reopened that Stargate. So the main film ensues. There's a nuclear bomb, Stargate gets shut down. SG-1 picks up about a year later, and when the Earthgate is activated, and then the Goa'uld come through and they attack. So O'Neill, the main character, in the film, he's portrayed by Kurt Russell. In the TV show, he's portrayed by Richard Dean Anderson. Two totally different versions of the character, which I'll get onto a little bit later. But they go back through to Abydos, where the original planet they went to in the film, where Daniel Jackson remained. And they find out that the Stargate is actually a network of Stargates across the galaxy. So as long as you've got the right coordinates and the right addresses, you can connect to another Stargate on another planet and you can go there and explore. So SG1 is formed along with other SG teams, and they basically explore the galaxy just try and make friends with alien races, to see what's out there, but also to defend against the bad guys. So you've got some really good like alien threats. You've got the Goa'uld, who essentially are these parasitical race that need a human host to survive. They came to Earth years ago, and they've gone out and they're in the galaxy, and they've enslaved basically most of the galaxy. And their thing is that they are gods. So they're false gods, but they enslave thousands and thousands of worlds and have loads of armies, and everyone believes that they're gods from the power that they possess. You've also got other bad guys called the replicators, which are like a robotic race that can, as they say in the title, replicate themselves. But essentially it's just an adventure show. They go across the galaxy. You've got individual episodes where it's just a one-off story. So they just go to a new planet, they explore, they see what's going on, but then you've got an overarching thing each season. So it's mainly the Goa'uld to start off with, and then through later seasons we get more bad guys introduced. To try and narrow it down, there is 10 seasons. So to try and narrow it down is
just quickly, Spaces. And so when you said it's an adventure show, so where like Amber and I have been waffling on about, and particularly me, about like hard sci-fi and science fiction tropes and etc. Would you say that Stargate is? I'm not diminishing it. Not diminishing it by saying this, but is it more drama?
So that actually gets me onto my next point.
Go on then.
So with Stargate, what I like about it is the Stargate itself is a great vehicle for storytelling. So you go through that Stargate and you go to a new planet and you can tell whatever story you want. So just as an example, you've got some harder sci-fi episodes like you're talking about, but you've also got some comedy episodes. Like there's an episode called Windows of Opportunity, where basically O'Neill and Teal'c get stuck in a time loop. And
hilarious.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And it gets to the point where they just give up trying to get out the time loops. They just basically fuck about and do whatever they want. For example,
Groundhog
golf.
Day.
Yeah, it's basically a Groundhog Day episode, and they end up just playing golf through the Stargate and just stupid stuff like that. You've also got, there's an episode called 100 Days in season 3, where there's a meteor shower on the planet they've gone to, and it takes out the Stargate, and O'Neill gets trapped. So you get like a more of a disaster movie sort of style. You've got Broker Divide, which is early on in season 1, where there's a pandemic, there's a plague going on. But then you've also got some more, I wouldn't say hard horror, but sort of like light horror episodes. There's an episode in season 6 called Nightwalkers, where a town is overtaken. It's almost like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers sort of style episode. There's another episode called Lifeboat, where Daniel Jackson gets a whole ship's personalities downloaded into his brain. So you get this like schizophrenic sort of episode, which is quite good. But the main thing that I think intrigued me is that it explores the theory of extraterrestrial beings having an influence upon human civilization in our past. So, for example, a lot of the characters that you meet are ancient figures that are believed to be gods. We've got 4. We've got the Goa'uld, who assimilate sort of the ancient Egyptian gods. But through that, you get the harder sci-fi episodes where we have time travel, and we have like similar to what you were saying about the courtroom scene, Amber. There's an episode like that in season 1, which focuses on Teal'c, who's basically is a Jafar. So basically, Teal'c is in service to the Goa'uld, but then he turns and he becomes, because he believes they're false gods, and he's one of the first ones that turn. So he's an outcast to his people. He's called a Sholvar, which is a traitor to his people. But whilst he was serving the Goa'uld, he committed loads of atrocities. He massacred loads of people in his god's name. So there's an episode where they go to a planet where he's already been to, and he's already massacred those people. So he gets taken captive and gets put on trial for all the atrocities that he's previously committed. So you've got a courtroom scene, well, a courtroom episode where the people of this planet see him as a monster, but we see him as, okay, he's done some bad things, but he's turned good. He's turned that arc around. So again, it offers a lot of moral thoughts because O'Neill is the leader, the commander, the one that just wants to get things done. He's the one that will get things done. Whereas you've got Daniel Jackson, who's the moral compass of the team, that is like, well, no, this is their process, this is their culture. He has done these things, and they both go at it because of that. So you do have these interesting little debates between the team throughout. So you get some of the harder sci-fi episodes, and you get some of the lighter sci-fi episodes. But I think for me, the fact that they tie it into Earth mythology and it's set in the present day, which not a lot of sci-fi shows are, it makes it feel a bit more real. For example, it's set in Cheyenne Mountain.
That's quite an interesting point, actually.
It's set in,
yeah.
For example, it's the base, the Stargate Command is in Cheyenne Mountain, which is a real base in America. So they've got loads of little bits like that, which is quite cool. And it also allows
balloons.
What's that?
Do they shoot down balloons?
Probably better than we are right now. Oh, God.
But they also do real world episodes. So for example, there's an episode where a senator is murdered, but O'Neill is framed for it. So it's like a murder mystery trying to free O'Neill and stuff like that. They do some really cool little random episodes in there. But I think the core of it is the original SG-1 team. So you've got O'Neill, who's the leader, the colonel. You've got Daniel, who's your archaeologist, your moral compass. And then you've got Teal'c, the alien. And then you've got Carter, who personally for me is my favorite. She is the astrophysicist tech genius of the team, but she's also a military girl and she smashes it, to be honest. I think she's awesome.
Is it the same actress? Is it the same actress from episode 1?
All the way
Amanda
through.
Tapping.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like
all the
her.
way through. Yeah,
She's
all the way
great.
through. And I feel like, so when they moved on, so with Stargate, it was season 1 to 5, they were with the Sci-Fi Channel. No, sorry, Showtime. Then they moved to Sci-Fi Channel. But they only got renewed one season at a time. So there's multiple times when you get to a season finale and they almost wrap everything up and then they get renewed again. Then they wrap everything up, then they get renewed again. With the plan always being wrap it up, then we're going to do some films, but then they kept getting renewed. But later on, so end of season 7, going into season 8, Richard Dean Anderson wanted to step back. So what they did was they made him the general of the base and Carter got promoted to the leader of SG-1. So she gets put more like front and center of the group.
Okay.
And she really does come into her own throughout the seasons.
Isn't that where they brought Ben Broder in?
That was later on. That was
later?
season 9 and 10.
Oh.
And with Stargate as well, I think the military sci-fi side of it was quite nice. It almost reminded me a little bit of Starship Troopers in a way, because you've got this military organization that's going through the gate, they're exploring, and you get some really good military episodes where, for example, there's one where they're going through, there's a mission report that they've got to go through where it went wrong on the mission, but they've now got to face the consequences for that. So you get some real nice, divisive, different styles of episodes throughout. But just some of the main episodes I wanted to point out. There's an episode in season 1, it's episode 18, it's called Solitudes. The Stargate malfunctions and they get sent, O'Neill and Carter get stranded on basically what we believe is a snow planet. Very nice episode. Basically, 2 people locked in an ice cavern. But it's a nice little twist at the end. So I don't want to ruin that for anyone. So there's a nice little twist at the end. Season 1, episode 18. Nice little twist at the end of the episode. There's another episode called A Matter of Time, which is in season 2. I think it's like episode 15 or 16-ish. And basically another SG team go to a planet. They realize that there's a black hole near the stars just collapsed and there's a black hole. So they try and dial back through to Earth. But what happens is with the time dilation, the Stargate stays open from the power of the black hole, but the time dilation is coming through onto Earth. So if they can't get the Stargate shut down, Earth will get ripped apart by the black hole. And you get some really good ideas with time dilation, but it's also it's sci-fi heavy in terms of Carter doing a technobabble all the way through. But they introduced this random character from O'Neill's past that comes into that episode, and he's only in it for that episode.
Yeah.
But how they do it, it grounds it in a way, and it raises the emotional stakes of the episode, which was quite nice. Another episode of note is The Other Side. So that's season 4, episode 2. They get contacted, the Stargate Command get contacted by some humans on a planet called Euronda, and they're basically fighting a losing war. And SG-1 go to help them. They give them supplies, etc., only to realize that they're actually the bad guys and responsible for mass genocide. So again, there's a moral thing. Do we just walk away now, or do we try and right our wrongs? So that was a particularly good episode as well. I'm rambling, I know, but I'll wrap it up soon. Don't worry.
No.
I want episodes that, like if you wanted to jump ahead and see, if I've watched the first episode and I think the second episode, and I went, I got to stop this. But I want to wait for the recommend, so I know how much endurance I need to have. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm not going to tell somebody, oh yeah, sit down and just start watching Star Trek. You'll love it. I'll say, hold on. Yeah.
The first episode is a hard watch. A hard watch. Very like cheesy, corny lines. It's just like, especially from Amanda Tapping.
That's why I said about
sort of like,
That's what I said about Babylon 5. If anyone new is going to watch it, I like the first series, but so episode 1 when they got into their little groove. But anyway, go on.
So at the end of season 1. I've got 5 episodes I want to mention quickly. So at the end of season 1,
I said 1 and pushed it.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
She did about 18.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
No, this is good because then I can watch these and be like, "Oh, that is good." Now I'll go back and watch all the ones in between.
Because I can stop sharing the screen with certain people. If I knew how to.
So the end of season 1, there's a 4-episode arc. So 3 of the episodes are the last 3 episodes of season 1. The final part of that arc is the first episode of season 2. The episodes are called There But for the Grace of God, Politics, Within the Serpent's Grasp, and The Serpent's Lair. And essentially, Daniel Jackson gets sucked through into an alternate reality where Earth has already been invaded by the Goa'uld. From that, he manages to escape, but he gets the coordinates of where the Goa'uld attack came from in that reality. Once he gets back, he realizes that they need to try and get to that planet to see if they can stop the attack from happening. But during all this, the senators are getting involved and the Stargate program's getting shut down. So SG-1 disobey orders and go through the Stargate. They manage to sneak aboard the ships, and the ships are heading towards Earth. And the ships get to Earth, and it's the first sort of invasion, and it's the first time it's a major threat of alien invasion against the Earth. So that I would definitely say is a pinnacle episode to jump on, that 4-episode arc. Other highlights, just quickly, Meridian. It's the end of season 5. It's a very emotional episode. Daniel Jackson gets hit with quite a bit of radiation.
Oh,
yeah, it's a great episode.
That's really,
it's a great episode.
Like you're recommending the entire series every season.
Pretty much from episode 5 of season 1 all the way
Stop
through.
Taking the piss. Stop taking the piss. The other one is the Lost City. So that was originally supposed to be a movie, but they worked it into the finale of season 7, and you can kind of tell it was meant to be a movie, to be fair. So the budget's up, there's big battles, there's battles everywhere on that episode, and it's very hard sci-fi. The last 2 episodes I've got for you, season 6 finale, Full Circle. This was originally supposed to be the final episode of Stargate SG-1. So at the time when they made this, they didn't know that they were coming back for a season 7. But they go back to the original planet on Abydos, and it's called Full Circle. It kind of wraps everything up from what we've seen so far, and it brings everything together, which I really like. But the episode I'm going to recommend, and it doesn't, and this is what I'd say to everyone, it's actually a later episode, but if you're just to jump on and watch any Stargate episode, it's season 7, episodes 17 and 18. It's a two-parter called Heroes. Now, the reason I say it to jump in on this episode is because what it does, you can just watch it on its own. You don't need to watch any other Stargate episodes. You can just watch this on its own because the perspective of the episode is from the documentary maker. So what happens is the Stargate program is top secret, but they know one day they're going to have to reveal it to the public, reveal it to the world. So what they do is they get this documentary team in, and they're going to video them and make a documentary about their journey and what they've done. So when they announce the Stargate program to the world one day, they can show them what the SG teams are actually doing. So you see the episode from the perspective of the documentary makers, and they go on a couple of missions with them, and there's some like sort of handheld footage side of it, but it basically reintroduces you to the entire Stargate program. But the main emotional thread through it is when they go on one of the missions, everything goes wrong. And a character dies. That's all I'm going to say. And it's a very heavy-hitting, emotional episode. The first one's a bit more action-packed. And I say it's a lot more action-packed. The finale of the part 1 is probably one of the biggest action scenes they've ever done. Part 2 is literally just in Stargate Command. You don't know who's died, and you're seeing the heartfelt reactions from each character, but you're seeing it through the eyes of the documentary maker. So for me, you don't have to watch any other Stargate episodes. Go straight into Heroes Part 1 and Part 2. It's an hour and a half put together, and it's like you're watching a documentary made about Stargate, but they do it in a really cool, emotional way.
But does that not resonate? Does that episode not resonate because you know the characters that they're doing the documentary of? Because they cleverly do it where they sort of reintroduce the characters. So when you get to the one that does go, you've already basically relived their best moments in the last bit of the episode. Because they did a similar thing with Babylon 5 with a news team. And what it was a news crew sent from Earth to Babylon 5, and they interviewed the characters we've come to know and love. But because we know them, when you see the actual report, it's not a documentary, it's the report, it's the news report. So they've done a little feature on Babylon 5.
Yeah.
Because we know the characters and how they are, when you see what the news crew have done, you think, fuck, they've made it and edited it. Like, they've made a villain out of one of them.
This one,
idiot out of another one. So is that similar to that documentary?
Sort of, but what happens is because they didn't expect, when they're like making the documentary side of it, they didn't expect one of the team to die, like one of the characters to die. It ends up becoming a tribute. And Tayters, you've seen that episode, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say what Liz is saying. It's like, knowing the team helps. If you've watched all of them, it helps because you get that connection. But it's not essential to the episode.
Right. No, that's cool.
You get that anyway through the documentary.
What was that season? You say
season 7, episode 17 and 18, I believe.
Oh, cool.
So it's part 1 and part 2. Now with Stargate, it was originally a movie. You had 10 seasons of SG1. Season 8, Richard Dean Anderson left. So he's not in season 9 and 10. He comes back for some cameos, but he's not in the final 2 seasons. And what they do is in the last 2 seasons, they bring in Ben Browder and Claudia Black from Farscape. They come into it as part of the main cast. And then they eventually did 2 movies after that. Also spawned 2 spin-offs. You had Stargate Atlantis, which went for 5 seasons, and you had Stargate Universe that went for 2 seasons.
But you shaking your head at.
Now it went on.
I can't believe how expansive the SG1 universe is. When you're talking about Trek, and you think, that is the thing. But I mean, SG1 can't be far behind it.
No. Well, I would say it's a second. It's a second to the expansiveness.
Deep Space Nine. I mean, SG1 and all its spin-offs.
Yeah, there's a lot
with
there.
the spin-offs, I mean, Atlantis was as close to the original SG1 as you're going to get, and it was good within its own right. But the other one, what was it called again, Liz?
Universe. It only went on for 2 seasons. It wasn't great. It wasn't great.
It wasn't good.
But why I'm saying that is, so it expanded all the way on. I'm honing on just SG1. My biggest fear is that back in the day, I always wanted more. I wanted more of it. I always watched it. I was gutted when SG1 ended. Even though O'Neill wasn't in it no more, I was gutted when it ended. They done 2 movies, and the 2 movies that they did, one of them was called Arc of Truth, the other one was called Continuum. They brought back the magic from the earlier seasons in a way. It was big sci-fi stories. It was awesome. And I always wanted more. And there was supposed to be more films planned, but then it all got, like, there was arguments with MGM, and it all got swept under the carpet, and it never sort of came to fruition. Prime have now brought MGM, and it's massive on the rumor mill that they're bringing Stargate SG1 back, or a Stargate show back. Bearing in mind how much I love it and how much I wanted to see more of it, I do not want them to touch Stargate at all.
Do you think?
Leave the horse dead. Leave the horse die.
Yeah.
It's right. The corpse is rotting. Leave it. Don't stop flogging it.
Yeah.
Do you find that SG1 is a show that grew progressively darker? I felt like watching Star Trek. It started out very optimistic and slowly became darker and darker. And I think that's why I didn't enjoy Deep Space Nine and Voyager and some of the others as much as I enjoyed Voyager, probably a little closer, but it didn't have some of the stuff that I really missed from Next Generation.
I mean, SG1, it definitely got darker. I mean, there's one episode where the Goa'uld have a device called the sarcophagus, which basically can reanimate you. And that's how they managed to keep the persona that they're gods, because they can keep reanimating themselves and they can heal from everything. O'Neill,
I mean, the general tone. Like the general tone of the episodes, they continue progressively get darker and darker.
Yeah.
And is that something you would want, or you like that, or?
Yeah, 100%. I like my dark. I like my dark stuff anyway, to be fair. But
Wizard.
What's that?
He's a dark alien lizard.
Yeah.
Keeping in character.
He is no Alf. That way.
No one touched on that sci-fi show.
That was only one series, wasn't it, Alf?
That was enough.
But the final thing I'll say about Stargate is that there is nothing else overly there's nothing else like it, because it's military sci-fi. Okay, you've got the device of the Stargate, but the fact that they bring all the mythology into it as well, it did feel immersive. It did feel that it was actually happening to a degree when I was younger. And I, like Amber's, watched it multiple, The Next Generation multiple times. I've watched Stargate God knows how many times over the years. Not in the last couple, but enough times where the episodes just stick in your head. There's darker episodes, there's lighter episodes, there's funny episodes, you could literally, one episode's literally like a disaster movie. You got the cult episode. There's loads of different bits like that. The range of storytelling through that vehicle of the Stargate is so expansive, and the team that they had, that core team at the beginning, was the perfect ensemble cast you could possibly have. Each person had their role. Each person fitted within that role, and they didn't deviate from it. The characters were the characters all the way through. They evolved and they developed, but they still had the core principles. And you had that moral conflict between some of the characters as well. But like, for example, between O'Neill and Jackson. O'Neill's the military man, Jackson's the guy with the moral compass. So sometimes O'Neill's right, sometimes Jackson's right. But it makes you think, what would you do? And that's what you were saying earlier. What would you do in these situations? But yeah, for me, that was my choice, and I'm sticking to it.
I think you sold it. I think you did a good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to add a round of applause after each of our pitches, I think. No, that's cool.
So what was your overall favourite episode then, Liz?
Overall was actually Full Circle, but I'm recommending Heroes. Full Circle's the season 6 finale where they return to Abydos.
What happened to series 1, episode 18 then that I'd written down here? It sounds like you've got about 25 different favourite episodes here.
Series 1, episode 18, that's Solitudes. That's a nice little episode. Nice little self-contained episode with a twist. I've narrowed it down. Full Circle's my favourite, but I'd recommend
Favourite
watching
character?
Heroes. Oh, it's got to be O'Neill.
O'Neill.
Yeah, it's got to be
Is that
O'Neill.
the governor?
Yeah, it's got to be him.
He's the boss. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be him.
Absolutely.
Not Kurt Russell, no.
No, the Rich Dean Anderson version, which is controversial because some people didn't like Rich Dean Anderson's version, but I do.
No, he was good. He was good.
Well, it's two very different characters. So from the original film, Kurt Russell played a very stoic, very straight-laced O'Neill, whereas O'Neill in the TV show, he plays him a bit dumb sometimes, which is quite funny.
Kurt Russell's best episodes, would you say?
What's that?
Kurt Russell.
Best
Kurt Russell's in the movie. Oh.
What? Wait, he didn't. You weren't catching on to that?
You didn't say that at the start, Liz.
Yes, he did.
I did.
You've done all that, and Kurt Russell ain't even in it.
No.
Ah. I'm only joking. Right, guys, who's next? Thanks for that, Liz.
No worries.
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
good.
good job.
That's awesome. Listen, we obviously love all this stuff, and I know. Listen, I do take the piss, but you know I love it as well. So
Yeah,
I'm up for it. Gentlemen, who's up?
Randy, because I want to hear Randy's Firefly stuff, because Randy wins, by the way.
How do I win?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I've got- because Firefly has one season, right?
Taters. You stole this from Taters. You know that, man.
Oh, did I?
Firefly was my first choice. I've gone with my second choice.
Don't
But
feel
that's fine.
guilty, though.
Oh,
Don't
I'm
feel
sorry,
guilty
but
about it, Randy.
that just shows that you have good taste. All right, so yeah,
Oh,
Firefly is my all-time favorite television show. I mean, of any genre or anything else. So sci-fi, whatever. This is my favorite. I feel, and of course, I'm going to come from the writer point of view, and I feel that Firefly is the best written television show that's been out there. Now, to be fair, I mean, I don't watch romances, and there's a lot of stuff that I don't watch, and there's a possibility that some of those have been written really well. But Firefly was amazing. So it only had one season. Joss Whedon had come off of doing Buffy. He was super, super hot in Hollywood, right? And he told them, I want to do this project, or I won't do, what was the next one?
Angel.
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 I don't want to Angel lets me do this.
Yeah.
So Fox is like, okay, we'll let you do it. But Fox didn't want to do it. So Fox aired the episodes out of order. So, and then sometimes they wouldn't air them at all. So they were Friday night, 7 o'clock here,
I
right?
didn't know that. I did not know that.
Yeah. So they were prime time. So wherever your prime time starts at, ours starts at 7, right? So
Yeah.
they were in that time slot Friday night, and then it might not show up for 2 weeks, and then they'd do another episode, and it might not be the next episode in line. And so what would happen is they would be a very fragmented storyline, because you're not following. Some of the episodes really benefited from seeing an earlier episode, so they did everything that they could to sabotage it, and it did not get a second season. So that's unfortunate. So what the show is basically a Western in space.
I was waiting for you to say that word, Randy.
Western?
It's Western. Yeah, I was waiting for you to say that.
Well, it is, and they do a beautiful.
Yes.
They do a beautiful job of it. The aesthetics of it is great. And so kind of set it up. This takes place immediately after a war. And it very much resembles the American Civil War.
Yes.
So if you think about that, there's a lot of parallels there. And so our main character, which is Captain Malcolm Reynolds, which is played by Nathan Fillion, right? He is on the losing side. Of course, if you ask him, he's not on the losing side. He's just on the side that didn't win. I mean,
The brown coats.
He's with the brown coats. He still wears the uniform.
Yeah.
And so does I'm sorry, his second in command. They still
Zoe.
both Zoe.
Yeah.
They still both wear the uniform from there, which causes lots of problems. But anyways, it's really about him focusing. I mean, he has bought a Firefly, and if you want to compare it in real world, think of the VW Bug, right? So that was the car of the people. It was durable, it was affordable, and it was easy to repair. So these Fireflies are a mass-produced spaceship that is commercially available and on the lower end of being able to get that, right? So with that, that gives him the freedom, and that's what we're kind of talking about here, is the freedom to do what they need to do or what they want to do, to do commerce, to travel where they want to go without the government overlord. So I mean, to have the Western element to it feels very appropriate for the mindset of this character. And then also, if you there's a lot of there's an Asian influence. So if you think of Blade Runner and how in the future like everything is got an Asian influence. So this is a space Western with lots of Asian influence. And so you will probably not ever see a more unique combination of things that work. Right. It is beautifully done. And one of the things I super love about, I mean, aside from the fact that the writing is so good, is that they've definitely developed their own world, right? So they have dialogue, they have terms that you hear that, and you once you get into that, you just, it feels natural, and it is great, all of the slang that they've come up with for their world. So that being said, the story has 9 main characters. And character is really what makes, I mean, the writing makes it good, but the writing focuses on characters. And so we have a really eclectic collection of characters. They're very different. So you have Mal and Zoe. Okay, so they're not that radically different from one another. They're soldiers, right? They were soldiers who are out and they want to be left alone by the government, and they want to be left alone by big corporations and everything else. They just want to do their thing and be left alone. And then you've got Wash, who's the pilot. He's married to Zoe. And you've got Kaylee. Oh, and she's great. So she's a small town girl who's their mechanic, right? And she has this very refreshing personality. She's innocent. She brings a really uplifting note to the cast, because without her, I think the production might be a little dark and heavy, right? But no, she lightens it up, and you like her. And then you get Jane, who's a mercenary. Jane is Jane is for Jane. Jane is always for Jane, right? He is a mercenary. And then we get some newcomers. Am I missing someone? I might be missing. So we get the shepherd, and I love Mal the best. He's my favorite character. But if I had to pick a second, I think it would be Shepard. All right. And so he's a religious man, right? And as the series goes on, we find out he used to be part of the government. So whatever he's doing, why he's a shepherd now is a mystery, which of course we never get revealed because there's only one season. But you're dying to know. Huh?
Sorry, did they do a film of it as well?
Yes, Serenity.
Yeah, they did, and then they killed Shepard.
A fan-funded film.
It was only 15 episodes, Randy?
Something 13. Like that.
13.
13.
Yeah, it wasn't even 15.
Were they all written by Joss Whedon?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, he did a fabulous job.
These for years. I think
even
in the other room there. I haven't watched them for years.
Even the opening title song was Joss Whedon.
Yeah.
I mean, it was it was a brilliant product, and in my mind, it is his magnum opus. That was the most brilliant thing that he's done, right? Just beautifully done. And yeah, they do kill off Shepard in the movie because Ron Glass, who played Shepard Brooke, hated the show. He hated it. So he's like, I only want to be in the movie if you're going to kill me. And they did. So they killed him off. But it's such a great character.
Oh, Harrison Ford.
Huh?
Yeah.
But so that's interesting, right? Because here's this guy. He's obviously going on a pilgrimage. He's reimagined himself. And he's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to improve the universe through whatever it is he's shepherd of, right? And he falls up in the middle of this den of thieves, right? And scoundrels and rogues. And it takes a while, but he's finally like, okay, this is where I need to be. These are the people who need a shepherd, not the good people. We need the scoundrels to have some kind of moral compass, right? So it's a brilliant character, and it fits so well with the rest of the cast. And then we have Tam and River. Is that right?
Simon Tam.
Simon Tam, yeah.
Yeah, Simon Tam and River.
Yeah, so they are rich. They're influential. They are from the civilized portion of this universe, right? But they're on the lam. They are after River because she is a part of a scientific experiment, and they consider to be a weapon of mass destruction, right? And so that's interesting. So we have very, very cultured people now in with these rogues, right? And so everything that they've added, and I think the last one is Inara, and so she is a companion.
Tayters.
And a companion is like an escort, except it applies to more than just sex. They're escorts, as in they're supposed to kind of help bring men into full bloom, so to speak. And I'm not talking sexually. I'm just like culture and society and how to behave in a proper way. So they're more than just what we think of as escorts, right? And so every character there has conflicts of one kind or another with the other characters, and that's what makes this beautiful writing, because it's all about character. Every situation, very simple plots, but yet it's how the characters interact with that plot and with one another when they have to deal with those situations. And so it's beautiful.
I think you saying that, Randy, I've got to admit, it's a real shame how Joss Whedon at the moment has ended up. The what's it? Because he has written and directed so much good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really gutted that he's at the, let's not, we don't go there.
No, we don't go there.
How he treated people along the way. I am gutted, because you can see a flush of excellence in Buffy. Then you can see it for definite in Firefly, and then you see it in Angel.
Yeah.
Then you see it in the couple of Marvel bits he's done, and you think, oh, this guy could have gone on and on, but instead he's at the, I don't know. Anyway, but
you talk about characters, Randy. You're talking about characters. Can you think of one bad character in that entire season? And I'm talking the little bit characters as well. There wasn't one. Even the ones that just turned up for that one episode, they were all fleshed out. They were all so well written characters.
And they was fleshed out within 2 or 3 or 4 sentences of dialogue.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Do you think it's because he knew he was getting? Do you think it's because he knew he was getting dicked about, so he wanted to prove a point? So it was his passion project, and he put his heart and soul into it.
I think he was just really interested in it.
I think it was his. It was his project that he really wanted to do. He put all of himself in it. I mean, and that he was at the peak of his game right then.
Yeah.
So we are seeing Ross Whelan at his very best. It's something that he loved, and he obviously has the talent to be able to do that when he's on his game. The characters, and back to what you were saying, the characters are great, not just the main character. So one of the characters that just really stands out is one of the villains. And so Tayters will know this guy, the assassin who shows up in the movie, right?
Google Early, that guy.
Huh?
No, the assassin from the movie, yes.
Yeah, yes, right. Yes. And he's in the series, right? And you see him a couple of times, and he is so awesome. He leaves such an impact on your memory, even though he's a lesser character. So no, absolutely. And then there's Badger. There's a ton of characters in there that you'll meet once. How about my Mrs. Malcolm? So the gal that pretends to be Malcolm's wife.
Yes, we see her a couple of times. Yeah.
So, and that all comes from the fact that the writer understands character and how to make a story by bringing out the conflict between characters.
I think that was his forte, Randy. Joss Whedon. That was definitely his forte.
Yeah, and that's what's great. Yeah. So in Amber and I, when we talked about this last episode of
The Last of Us.
The Last of Us. I mean, so really that's what I'm talking about. We see this situation with Bill and Frank, and it's about character, right? It is about them interacting. A situation comes up, maybe it's a bad situation, maybe it's a good situation, but it's them and their conflict and interacting. And the more in depth, more layers we have to those characters, the more interesting that show will be as we see those layers, that depth come up and clash with one another. And so, yeah, that's just excellent. So my favorite episode is Janestown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jane, as I've already said, he's a mercenary, right? So he is I am out for Jane.
Yeah.
And so he goes there. And so this town, they love him. They have a statue. They're mudders because they deal in mud. Okay. So they're mudders, and they are just the bottom of society. I mean, think of miners or whatever back in that day when that job was not respected, right? So they're in the muddy mud fields, doing mud to make brick and everything. And so what had happened is Jane had been there previously on a heist, and he had made a mistake, and all the money from the heist, like they're on a sled, a sky sled, they're flying over the town. It opens up and all the money comes out. So the town thinks that Jane did that on purpose, that he was like a Robin Hood character, and they love him. And there's a statue. He even has a theme song that they sing, the hero of Jamestown, right? And so someone catches up with Jane and is going to kill him. And one of these young kids who worship Jane steps in the way and takes the bullet, right? And Jane's like, why, you stupid kid? Why did you do that, right? And it was a really touching episode because you see Jane finally come to a realization that normally he never would. He finally thinks about someone other than himself. And so it is a great moment. It's a great episode. And then secondly, I'm not going to do like another favorite episode, but I'm going to do a favorite line. So in a later episode, Jane betrays the group, or at least he starts to go through with it. And then he thinks better about it, right? Because Malcolm, because if he betrays Malcolm, he's pretty sure he's dead. And yeah, so he is not going to be, he finally like, I'm not going to betray Malcolm. And for whatever reason, I mean, you can get some hints that is because maybe Malcolm has really treated him well, right? And just to know that Malcolm, the reason he's traveling with Malcolm was in a previous encounter, Jane was part of the group that was going to kill Malcolm, and Malcolm said, I'll pay you more. It's like, okay. And so he shot the guys he was working with. So yeah, Jane is for Jane, but we see another growth because Jane's maybe thinking there's more to the world than Jane. But the line that I love is Jane talks about one of these days, what if I decide to betray you? And then Malcolm goes, that'll be an interesting day. And the way he delivers and everything is one of my all-time favorite lines out of any show. So there we go. That's my favorite show.
Cool.
Like I said,
nice.
There's so much to that show. There's not one weak point. It is just a good show.
Do you know anybody who doesn't like it?
I don't know.
I don't know a single person who doesn't love it.
I think that's it. I either know people that love it or haven't seen it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's that.
And I'm not much for watching shows over. I mean, there's a few shows or movies that I just love and I can watch them however many times. So this is a thing where, like, if my wife is watching, because we have it on DVD, if my wife or one of my kids is watching and I walk through the living room and it's on, I pause. Yeah. And then that's a mistake, because then I have to sit down and I have to watch it, because even though I know the whole series and everything that happens, it's just so engaging that I have to watch it.
It draws you in. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I'm like that with The Simpsons. Whatever episode's on.
You're just jealous of Homer's hair.
Yeah.
So did you guys know that the movie was basically crowdfunded?
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. The fans were so upset that it was ended, and Joss Whedon said, you guys come up with the money and I'll do it.
I'll do it, yeah.
I mean, we needed that. I really felt like the movie was so badly needed.
Yeah.
And at least to bring some kind of an ending to it. And I thought it was a great idea.
And there is something about the fact that it is only one series. You know, that cult hit.
Yeah.
That kind of and it's pure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
mean, there was rumblings.
Drag out and have a shit series. Drag out and introduce shit characters. It was kind of honed right in. There's something about that.
I do remember before, I can't remember if it was 2018 or 2019, there was talk of potentially Joss Whedon rewriting and doing the second season.
And I suppose if it was him, I suppose it's great. But nevertheless, I still think to myself,
I happen to agree. I happen to agree. It's done now. It's done. Leave it, because you know we lost Shepherd Book. We've lost Wash. You can't replace those characters.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be the same.
You could do more in the same universe, but honestly, even though it's so unique of a universe, the characters made that show.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Randy points that out, that if the characters are so strong, that's what made the show so incredible.
Absolutely. Awesome. But like I say, Randy, you won.
Hey, I like it.
Well, we didn't even take a vote yet.
Of what? We don't need to.
But they weren't even going to vote. You just said declared him the winner of what? What's he won?
I don't know. You've got to make him some sort of plaque.
Wait. You get him a T-shirt, Tayters.
Here we go. Yeah. Winner.
Right, come on, Tayters.
Oh God!
Randy,
right, what a leap!
So, Randy, is that your whole Firefly thing?
Yeah, I mean, with one season, I mean, what else is there to say?
No, that's cool. That's cool. So, Tayters, you Randy.
Quantum Leap.
Cool.
It's really good. It's really good. There we go. Done.
So, until next time.
I don't want to go into detail. No. Jesus. What I struggled with the sci-fi element, because I'm like, is it because it's set in real world? You know what I mean? It's set between 1953 and 1995. So are we actually dealing with sci-fi? Because of he's leaping around in time, but I struggled with that bit. But it is, I don't know. I think Amber convinced me it's still sci-fi, so I went with it.
I think so. No,
I went with it.
I think it's the same as Liz with Stargate, where I said, well, you know, I'm kind of asking the question. I'm not saying whether it's there's no wrong or right answers, but do you think it's more drama, like SG1, and it's like Quantum Leap? It's like you've got the setup, you've got the conceit of leaping somewhere, like you can go anywhere, but the story you tell each week can be anything. You know, you can tell a romantic story, you can tell a horror story, you can tell a. So I know where you're coming from. Is it sci-fi or not? But no, I think it's gone.
It's still it's loose sci-fi. But no, I mean, like as a show, I mean, obviously everybody's seen Quantum Leap. Everybody knows Quantum Leap, So we know Sam Beckett, Dr. Sam Beckett.
Everyone has watched it.
Yes.
Have you watched it? Have you never watched Quantum Leap?
What? Come on. This was prime TV in the 90s.
I'm going to put my hand up and say I've never, ever watched an episode of it.
What? Because just no interest, or just never got around to it?
It just looked boring.
No, it's fun. It's great fun.
I mean,
what year did it come out, Tayters?
Over here, it was released in 1990. I was 16.
I remember watching it. It must have been on like reruns or something. I remember watching it when I was like 10 years old or something like that.
I think it was the year prior. I'm sure it was 89 release in the States and 1990 here, because that's how it used to work back then. We used to get stuff after. But no, it was set in 95. So it was just like it was set from so Sam Beckett is a quantum physicist in 1995, creates this I forget what the project was called.
The Leap.
Like I said, I didn't take any notes. I didn't do any research. I'm going from memory.
You watched it about as much as I did.
Oh no, I watched it a lot back then. But listen, okay, between Next Generation, between 10 seasons of Stargate SG-1 and watching Firefly about 15 billion times.
89.
89 in the US. Yeah, it was 89 in the US, 1990 in
1989.
the UK. Yeah. But yes, Sam Beckett traveling through, basically he travels through time, but it can only be within his own lifetime. So his birthday was in 1953.
You know what? I was wondering why you said those specific years. I was thinking, but no, that's cool. Come on.
Yeah, so they do explain it in some later episodes. I'm trying to remember the season and the episode. I believe it was Dr. Zero. I can't remember the episode, but he jumps into he leaps into a kid who's working on a sci-fi program with actually his hero from when he was a kid. So Sam Beckett's hero when he was a kid was this Dr. Zero, who explained about time travel. He leaps into the kid who's helping Dr. Zero, who then Sam Beckett is explaining to him, this is how time travel works, who then the guy explains it on the TV, giving the information to a young Sam Beckett, who then, you get that?
The loop, like Looper. Yeah.
Nice little circle. But yeah, it's really, that's a really good episode because it explains the theory behind it and part of string theory, and you take that string and you ball it up, and all those little points that touch, that's what you can travel within. So it's just like, yeah, it's great explanation. It does cover it. I mean, we also have Al. He's like holographic friend, Admiral Al Kalazinki. I can't remember his surname now. I can't remember his surname. But Al's a hologram. He basically follows him through time. He's his guide. He's taking him through, helping him out with his tasks, because the whole tagline of the show was correcting things which once went wrong, if I remember correctly. Correcting things that once were, I think that's the tagline of the show. I'm sure it was.
That was played.
Sorry.
So the hologram is played by Dean Stockwell.
That's it, Dean Stockwell. Yes.
I was just thinking that was the face that you kind of know from everywhere.
Well, Dean Stockwell, you got to remember, shortly, but he got Quantum Leap because he had just come off of, I believe it was Blue Velvet, and he just got an Oscar nomination for another movie as well, and I can't remember what it was back in the day.
He's in Stargate as well.
At the time, wasn't
he?
He was with David Lynch at the time. Blue Velvet.
That's it. It was David Lynch's movie. What was it?
Dean Stockwell was also in Stargate as well.
He was, yeah. Oh God, what was the name of that? Married to the Mob. He got an Oscar nomination for Married to the Mob.
Well, David.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And he was originally being put up for the part of Sam Beckett as well. So when they first, they wanted him as Sam Beckett, but then Scott Bakula come in and done his audition, and they just basically said, no, that's the guy. That's our one.
He was amazing in that role.
He was very good. He was very good. But you end up following Sam. He's jumping. Like I say, there are some. A lot of them are single episodes, but from about halfway through season 2, if I remember correctly, there's like an overlining. There's something that's tracking through the whole of the rest of the season up to season 5. And it's all to do with Al's past and Sam's past. It's one little storyline that's very slightly intertwined. And there's always this little, they come back to it quite a few times. Season 3 for me was probably the opening for season 3. See, episode 1 and 2. It was a 2-parter. That for me was really good. It was called it was called a leap home, episode 1 and 2 of season 3. And it's basically Sam Beckett jumps into a 16-year-old Sam Beckett. And he's conflicted because
I wonder what you're going to say then.
So he leaps into his own self as a 16-year-old kid. And he's convinced that he's there to save his dad and his brother, who's a Navy SEAL, who was going out to war and ends up dying. And his dad dies of cancer. So he was convinced his mission was to save his dad and his brother. It turns out his mission was actually to win a basketball game, so that the coach ended up getting his career as a pro coach, and he saves 2 of his classmates. They go on to college and have a better life.
Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
It's pretty cool, yeah. But then he, in the second part of that, he leaps in to one of the members of his brother's SEAL team. Yeah, they're actually
nice.
So he leaps into one of the SEAL team that's working with his brother. His mission then is to save his brother. Yeah. And this is part of the story where we start to learn about Al's background, because we end up leaving that episode knowing that Al, as a young man, is a POW and Sam can't help him before he leaps. And it's just like we start getting this little twist going. It's very well done. It is very well. There's a lot there. Like I say, this is all coming from memory. So some of these bits I might be slightly wrong on, but I'm pretty sure it was Leap Home episode 1 and 2 from season 3. I'm 99% sure.
You're off. I'll just edit you out if you're wrong.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's fine. That's no worries. Probably my favorite episode though. It was season 1. I want to say episode 8. It's called The Kamikaze Kid.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. He jumps into this spotty little oik and his whole mission is to save his sister. This kid's sister is in an abusive relationship, and it turns out later on the guy's an alcoholic, and so his whole mission is to get her away from his sister. But this kid's a street racer, so Dr. Sam Beckett is in this kid's body. He basically puts nitrous into the car. We're talking Fast and Furious, but back in '63. It's just like it's awesome. It's such a good.
That's Thunder Road, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I remember that episode.
It's a really good episode. Yeah, he's a spotty little kid. But there's a lot of social elements to this as well. With problems that are occurring, race, lots of different bits and pieces through this whole series. It's really, really good. And I mean, they didn't even know they were finishing at season 5. They got told last minute we're wrapping at the end of this, and they had to sort of scramble to make the finale of season 5 something worthwhile.
Wow.
Okay, but that being said, Taters, okay, so one of the things that I really love, I mean, and I love this show, this is one of my all-time favorites too, is that they did wrap the show up, right? They were still going strong with their story. And episode 5, I mean, the last episode they do is very satisfying. You're like, okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And we end up with Sam Beckett basically disappearing. He doesn't return. He never gets home. He's nice. There somewhere in time. But his last job is to reunite Al with his first ever wife, who actually remarried when she believed that he died in the POW camp. Yeah. And by the time Al got back, she had remarried and had her family. And that was his biggest regret. So Sam took it upon himself that I need to close this loop. I need to get Al his family back. And it was like a bit of self-sacrifice because he never returns home because of it.
Nice.
Yeah. And it's a good little wrap up. It is a good little wrap up.
And you're left with the idea that Sam is going on to something bigger.
Yeah, he doesn't absolutely. Yeah. It's the guy in the diner who he's trying to work out, is this God? Is this guy God? Is it fate? And yeah, there's a lot that goes on there. It wraps up really nicely.
That spirituality element of it again.
Well, again, so throughout it's sort of like it's peppered into the whole thing. Yeah. Who's actually guiding Sam when he leaps?
Because it's not the science.
That's it. Is it God? Is it fate? Whereas the God character, but his name's Al. He's a bartender in a bar in 1953. He's basically saying to Sam, no, why can't you accept it's you? You are a master of your own fate. And that's how they finished that with it like I say, I wish I'd done some homework now.
Not only let yourself down, you've let us.
Didn't they?
I know, yeah. Just scrap
it. Don't feel guilty about it.
Didn't they reboot it?
Sorry, I got an episode that I really like. I don't know that's my favorite, but it's the one about Buddy Holly.
Yes, where he's working on the farm. Yes, yeah. Where you get a lot of those sort of characters pop up. He did one where he leaps into a young Elvis.
Yeah,
remember? Yeah. It's loads of those little characters that they pop up from time to time. It's actually really good. Yeah, fantastic. They did reboot it, Liz. You had Quantum Leap 2022. Yeah. See, now where they fall off on that, I did watch episode 1. I haven't watched any. I've watched episode 1.
Yeah.
And what Quantum Leap got right, again, with the sort of like show don't tell business, you learned Sam's background, Al's background, who Ziggy is, who Gushy is. You learned all this as the shows went on. There was no sort of like, let's take 30 minutes of the first episode and explain everything. That's exactly what they did with Quantum Leap 2022. Here's the main bits. Now we're going to explain everybody else and how they fit. And then we're going to start leaping. And it was just like, a bit of a letdown.
Because that's what I was going to lead on to. If Tayters, that's what I was going to ask. Like after, if you're finished with your Quantum Leap, you know,
from what I can remember,
from what you can remember is. So we've gushed about like our favourites, and I think they're all cool selections. They're all great selections that have turned up in times of our life or have impressed us at a certain point in our, you know.
Like I said, I was 16.
They are awesome, and they stand the test of time. Every single one of them. So what has gone wrong now? What
I think Tayters touched on something. So as you were talking, something clicked in my head. I had a conversation with my sister yesterday. Her son is 9 years old, and he doesn't have the patience to sit through a Disney movie, like one of the old Disney movies. And she said, you know, this is a real problem that kids today, and this not just little kids, but you know, teenagers and stuff, they've never had to wait for anything. They don't know what it is to sit and watch a show and then wait through a commercial. Because they can skip ahead. They don't know what it is to sit and listen for your favorite song on the radio. You can't skip ahead past the songs you don't like to the ones you want to hear. You have to listen for it. You know, even with a cassette
or wait a week.
You'd have to
wait 1 week to the next episode.
Exactly. And so I was thinking about what you were saying.
I can't wait 7 days. I forget the series that they brought out, and on social media, the biggest thing. I don't know whether it was House of Dragon or not. Might have been a bit before that. But one of the main complaints was that people were saying, oh, I've got to wait a whole week for the next episode. I don't think I like it. Hello?
Love binging, but I think what it's done to younger people and to people in general is that it has given them this impatience and they need instant gratification. So what you were talking about, Tayters, where they just tell you everything in the beginning and there's no waiting with bated breath for what is the answer to this. I need to know more. You're given it right away because they might not be interested later. They might not be interested in waiting. And I love a mystery. I love seeing a story become more elaborate the longer, I have to wait and, get to the end of it.
Find out something else next week or next episode.
Yeah.
Don't wait a week. Even if you don't wait the week, we might find out something new next episode, or we will, because the writers have put a question in there where you think, and I do notice I am getting guilty of that now, particularly with Kaleidoscope, where I was going, oh, there's a plot hole there. And now I'm impatient. I'm going, I need to know everything right now.
But are you impatient, or are you just expecting that all the other shows do it this way? How come this one's not? Are they just not going to answer these? So I think there's an anxiety that maybe they won't answer them. Yeah,
it's like they're poisoning me. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Down and let this show unravel, whatever it is. I'm not just saying Kaleidoscope, I'm saying anything.
But you were afraid they wouldn't answer these questions, is what I mean.
Is the thing. That's the other,
is that, are they not bringing it up now because they didn't think to include it? Because everybody's including this information right away so that we are instantly gratified. Yeah. So if they don't include it right away, you're going, well, shoot, did they just leave this giant hole? And you want to know right away if they actually fill that hole.
They're dumbing it down.
Yeah. And Randy talked about that, about writing for kids. Nobody wants to watch something that is dumb.
For kids.
And that's what they're doing. They're making they're catering to a very short-term memory, patience level.
TikTok generation.
Yeah, exactly. TikTok generation.
And it can only be the producers saying, oh, well, I don't think anyone's going to understand why that character's doing that unless we explain it.
But
I think it's
Or do
But-
Sorry, go on, Amber.
You know, whatever it is.
Well, I was going to say that I think what they're doing is they're trying to get this bigger audience by catering to the people who are accustomed to that. But at the same time, they're propagating the problem. This is what it should be. Like you, Hog, you just said, I was watching Kaleidoscope going, what the hell? Why didn't they answer that question? Why do I have to wait so long? And it's not because you wouldn't have waited, but because you have been trained at this point to expect that if they don't tell you right away, they probably won't. So you're upset that they're leaving a hole.
Yes.
They are
I think as
creating
well,
a problem.
I hated myself for that. Once I'd seen the next episode, they explained the couple of bits that I was missing, and you understand the format. But I hated myself for feeling that way instead of just letting. But it's not just the producers, the creators dumbing it down. Like you just said, it's not trusting them. I don't trust them. But in my review of Kaleidoscope, I just said to people, trust the creators.
I liked that when you said that.
Yeah, they've done all right here.
I think as well now it's horses for courses now.
It's what?
It's horses for courses now. So you've got those that. So we're used to the old format of weekly network television. Now you've got all the streaming services. There's some that decide to drop it all at once. There's some that decide to release episodes weekly. I think as a creator now, you need to be really careful about how you're going to deliver your show and the formatting of your show. If you've got a shitter like Kenobi, I don't want to see. I don't want to wait a week for that more shit. Just drop it all at once. Whereas if you've got something that's engaged,
just unload.
Yeah, that's it. Just I need an enema.
But but if you are going to do a weekly format, it has to be something that's engaging, that's going to want to make you come back to the next week. Where everything's being pushed through, you said it before, that fast food chain, the episodes aren't constructed as intelligently. They can't be just standalone episodes. Most of the time, it's just a filler. Most of the time, it's a film that's been extended out into a series so they can get another series out of stuff.
Yeah.
So that way, you haven't got that. It's almost like they don't trust themselves to be able to deliver week on week. So they think, let's just drop it all at once. And where that's happened so many times, I think that's why people just decide to do it. There was a show in England. I don't know if you've got it over in. It's not sci-fi at all. I don't know if you've seen it in America. It's called Line of Duty.
Nope.
I haven't seen it. I know about it.
So it's not sci-fi at all, but it's called Line of Duty, and it's basically a group of cops going after bent cops, like other corrupt police officers. And over in England, it was a massive thing, and that was released weekly. And in between each week, everyone was talking about it, waiting for the next thing, because the writing was so good on it. And it kept you hooked, it kept you engaged. You was trying to guess who the main player was. They nicknamed him H, like who's H and all that sort of stuff. And that sort of TV works on a weekly basis. Whereas if they dropped all that at once, you'd have binge watched it all the way through. There'd be no buzz about it. There'd be no questions behind it, not trying to work out what's happened next. What the key is you've either got dumbed down stuff or you've got little niche stuff like that. Whereas all the stuff that we're talking about is stuff that was delivered every week without fail.
Everything we've spoken about tonight, that's a good point. It's everything we've spoken about tonight. Did we all watch that weekly as it was released?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And like, especially like Amber and Liz, we're used to talking about multiple years.
Yeah.
I know Babylon 5, but nevertheless, that was 5 years. But you're talking about, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Well, 7 for TNG. It was 10 for SG1. Yeah.
But it would be 22 or 24 episodes, was it?
Yeah.
TNG and Stargate, was it? Oh no, it was Babylon 5 was 22 episodes.
Yeah.
A series.
Yeah.
And
there was 214 Stargate episodes in total.
And
if I remember rightly, Quantum Leap was, I think, 12 or 13 on season 1, and then 22 season 2 to 5.
At the time, SG1 had beaten X-Files for the longest running series. Stuff's beating it now, but it was the longest running sci-fi show at the time. but week on week they had to deliver, and you had to have intelligent writers coming up with intelligent stories each week. Well, whether it was an ongoing arc, whether it was just a standalone episode, you had it each week. And if it wasn't, if you tune in,
the format of network TV and advertising.
But do you think it will come back? Do you think it will come back? I think for the most part it will come back.
I think it is. Because already we're seeing, I think the experiment of the streaming platforms, and all it's going to do is morph into. It's going to change.
Well, we said this last time, didn't we? It'll end up back as cable TV.
I think so.
It's already giving changing its model, and that is still the king.
Yeah.
What was the last sci-fi, great sci-fi?
Netflix for content is still the king, and they're reintroducing advertising. So not only will they have all the figures for how much people are watching Squid Games or Stranger Things, all their big hits, the advertising revenue will dictate where they go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But what was the last great sci-fi show that everyone's watched? So we've spoken about all like the sort of late 80s, late 80s, 90s, early noughties. But in recent years, I spoke about earlier, The Expanse. I can't think of any other sci-fi TV show really that's really hit the mark.
There's been some interesting ones, but I don't know if there's one like a long project that's done really well.
Because how many seasons was Battlestar?
Oh geez, I don't know. It wasn't very many though. It was like 4 or 5, something like that.
And it wasn't called. Was it called Battlestar Galactica or just Galactica?
Yeah, it was Battlestar Galactica.
It was Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
Anyone not watch Foundation on Apple TV? Foundation.
I was so interested in it, and then I heard it didn't do well, and I kind of was like, I don't know if I want to invest my time.
Anyone who wants to tackle Isaac Asimov, is welcome to try it. But no, I didn't know. I'm just curious to see.
What's it called? Foundation,
yeah.
Foundation.
But it's sad to think though, all the shows that we've spoken about were all done within like a 10, 15-year period.
Yeah.
We look at more modern stuff and we say Battlestar, but that was still early noughties, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. Well, I mean, probably the most modern, as Amber's touched on before, is the Orville.
Yeah.
Which is okay. It's reboot of TNG with a little bit more humor, but it's.
But even the Orville, there's a very select audience for that. It's narrow.
Absolutely.
It's the Star Trek fans who also love comedy. It was. I think it actually started as smaller and got a little bit bigger, but
But let's say we're only naming 1 or 2 little bits. I can't think of anything else that sort of goes on that level. I mean, sci-fi is definitely not dead, because sci-fi, out of all the genres, you can pluck whatever story you want and you can just use your imagination. Whereas we're not getting it. I don't know why.
Would we not call Stranger Things sci-fi?
It's a different kind.
It's a different kind. Yeah, it's definitely. I love Stranger Things, but
would it fall into sci-fi or fantasy?
I really enjoyed that.
It's border because it's it's a parallel world that typically falls into fantasy genre more easily than sci-fi genre, but they do it in both. So
Stranger Things for me is more of like a mashup. So you can obviously tell the writers like the 80s. It's kind of a mashup of all the things that sort of inspired them. Really,
well, Predator being number 1. I mean, the town's called Hawkins. It was the guy that what's the sheriff's name that went missing? What's the sheriff's name?
Hopper.
You get Predator.
Hopper.
Are you kidding? Right, the town's called Hawkins. The guy in the glasses in Predator was called Hawkins. The guy who goes missing, the sheriff of Hawkins, what's his name?
Hopper.
Right. Who's the guy that goes missing? Who's the guy they find in the woods, strung upside down in the tree in Predator? Hopper. Thank you very much. Jim Hopper as well. Same character. There's loads of Predator crossover because the 2 guys that wrote that show loved the Predator.
No, yeah, they did.
They loved John Carpenter, I think.
John Carpenter. And that's what I was going to say. They've named characters after Predator.
Yeah.
I don't think the inspiration
No. I'm just saying.
Anyone that's Stranger Things would say, I can tell they really, there's a lot of Predator in there.
because there is talk because between the last season of Stranger Things and Predator, the original, obviously with Schwarzenegger, there's only 1 year difference on the timeline, and there is talk that there's potential going to be some sort of crossover for the next season. Well, again, probably
they're trying to pull in the audience of the Predator fans, and yeah, that's to me bullshit. Sorry.
It's more than likely unsubstantiated rumor, but
I mean, surely they've got a big enough audience.
Oh, now, Jesus Christ, yeah.
The potential Predator audience to bring along to the Stranger Things party, who cares?
It's a benefit to Predator more than to the Stranger Things audience. I mean, producers, because Stranger Things, there's a following. People love it. I wasn't a big fan of season 3, and so I didn't bother with 4, although I've heard that 4 actually brought it up a notch, so maybe I'll watch it. But unless it was written in order to be connected, like the intention of the writers was to do this, it's just a ploy. It's just a way to make more money. I mean, it's so stupid. It's like what they did with Willow. There was absolutely no reason why this should have been connected to the movie Willow. They did it because they thought they were going to have a pre-existing audience, or they were going to draw in more audience. That's what it's about. And so you watch it and you go, this was such a joke that they tried to say that they're connected. If they say this is Predator, it's lost all credibility.
I think it was just the 2 guys that are on Stranger Things, giving out some fantasies, bringing in a little bit of the stuff that they love. That's all.
A little wink to the audience.
That's it. Little nods.
You
Little
can't
nods.
go wrong with that. You can't go wrong, and they are those 2 showrunners are awesome on Stranger Things.
It's like in season 4, the nods to Freddy Krueger throughout.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's so many nods to that. But no, it's again, that's more of a mashup, hard sci-fi or just sci-fi in general. It's very sparse at the moment. There's nothing going on.
Which is a shame.
Yeah.
Well, there's an open space. There's an open space there, isn't there? Someone someone needs to fill that.
Yeah, spend loads of money.
Yeah. There's loads of Star Wars stuff in prep.
Do you think that they feel that Star Wars and Star Trek, now that they've got their spin-off shows, are just saturating the market? I think that's another big problem, is that there are so many means for having your work put on screen that, of course, we're seeing so much crap. Yeah. You know, if you've got a small collection of artists really putting their heart and soul into individual works, you're going to see good stuff. That's what was happening in the 90s. That's what we saw. That's why we have shows from that time period that are good. But now there are so many ways to be producing film that you get a lot of this crap, and then they're competing with each other. And the only way they feel like they can compete is to produce more crap faster, you know?
That's it.
So
not better quality, just more of it.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah. It's quantity. It's quantity that's important.
A longer turd than you can.
And that does make you more money. I mean, it is an effective way of making more money. It's just unfortunate for all of us who go
have to watch shit.
Oh, Dismore finding that what they're doing is not working.
I hope that it teaches them a financial lesson.
We're gonna find out next month with Mando season 3, because this is like the first, as far as I know, this is the first TV Star Wars we're going to get where there's no Kathleen Kennedy influence whatsoever. She was not allowed to touch it. This is all Favreau. So, like I say, this was the one where Favreau basically said, "If you make me work with her, I'm leaving."
Nice. Yeah. Good for somebody standing up for
Mando season 3. It should be the turnaround.
All this news is coming out now, isn't it? All this news is
coming out. Jesus Christ, yeah.
You know, about whatever they was filming, and he just went to Mexico to do Mando series 3.
Oh, that was Book of Boba Fett. Yeah, that was Book of Boba Fett. Yeah.
Right, get on with it then. You get on with it. If you want to do it how you want to do it, a few months later, he's got to save it.
Yeah.
Because it's so shit.
Yeah.
That's where you get the 2 episodes of
Mando 2.5, yeah.
But yeah, as soon as she's gone, it'll be good news. But you never forget that Iger brought her in.
Yeah.
and he's there now.
Yeah.
So
it could have also been one of those situations where he brought her in and was like, oh crap, I didn't think it would turn out like this. I mean, yeah, that happens. You know, you think, wow, this person's really inspired, and then you find out they should not be given power. So yeah,
and the rumors about Indiana Jones 5 as well, that is getting sorted out.
Oh, really?
Sorted out?
Catch me up, because this is stuff I've missed.
Fleabag's getting written out.
Really?
Yes, because KK's on her way out. They've done the test screenings. This is all rumor at this point.
Yeah.
But the test screenings that are bad, that isn't rumor. That is fact. They were
scored low.
Badly received, yeah. And the whole time travel thing and her taking the hat, and which then was going to lead on to her doing an Indiana Jones TV series for Dismal. I mean, what audience?
Well, clearly none.
5 shows we've spoken about. Who's crying out for a female Indiana Jones? Is there anyone out there? Hello. But anyway, apparently, no, you're right, Tayters. It's on the. As soon as she's gone, I'm hoping it will be on the mend.
Well, like I say, March 1st, we get Mando season 3, so we should see some good stuff again.
Because Andor had the glimmer of hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It wasn't perfect.
No.
But you know what?
It was in the right direction.
We would have made a good film. 90 minutes. Without...
Yeah.
I'm being spiteful now. I'm being spiteful. No, that would have made a good shorter series. But nevertheless, I did enjoy it.
There's a lot of news coming out of the Star Wars camp. The new sequel trilogy. It's just like that.
Star Wars Day, Phil. When
celebration?
Yeah.
Easter weekend.
Yeah.
So I'm only there for one day, but we got the Easter weekend, the 4-day weekend in Easter. So I'm looking forward to that. I say I'm only there the one day, but it'll be a good day.
What is this? Star Wars what?
Star Wars Celebration. So it's basically a Star Wars convention run by Lucasfilm. Yeah, it's
very cool.
They put it on every year. Last year was it last year? Did they do 21?
Yeah.
No, I think 22 was at Anaheim. Anaheim, yeah. Star Wars Celebration Anaheim. This one's at the XL in London. So
what
nice.
Dress up as? What are you dressing up as?
Dave Filoni.
Nice.
What did you just put a hat on?
That's it.
Right then, guys. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Unless anyone else has got anything else to say about the current.
I think we're good.
Of sci-fi.
I think we're all good, man.
I think we're good, and we all agree. Randy won.
Yay!
No, he won. Go. I think you're the only one that watched Babylon 5. I don't think anybody else has seen Babylon 5. So you're
the only one voting for Randy.
I am stuck. I'm stuck between second place Liz or Amber. I'm not quite sure. I could go either way there, but
I provided pictures.
Me and you dragging up the rear hog.
Pictures are coming.
They'll be added in post. I get it.
Oh yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
They will, and Tayters will be edited out. So
that's fine. Yeah, I'm used to that.
Even said that. From now on, let's not all listen to him because I'm editing him out anyway. So it'll make it easier for me. So I'll say good night, Amber. Good night, Liz. Good night, Randy.
Good night, folks. Thanks for having us again. Loved it.
You Tayters. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
Have a good one.
See you soon. Take care.
See you soon.